So this happened a couple years back, but it still sticks with me like it just happened last week. I was 38 at the time, divorced, living out of my truck, and working odd jobs just to scrape by. Not proud of it, but that's where life had me. I used to have a steady job in Ohio, working maintenance at a factory, but things went sideways when the plant closed down and I couldn't get back on my feet. I'd been couch surfing for a while, but that dried up. Eventually, I started sleeping in my truck in a Walmart parking lot. It was summer, so at least the nights weren't freezing. Still sucked, though. I showered at the YMCA when I could afford the day pass, or cleaned up in gas station bathrooms. I was tired all the time and feeling pretty damn useless. I'd pick up cash doing drywall, yard work, whatever I could. It was just enough to keep gas in the tank and food in my stomach. Nothing more. I applied for full-time work every week, but either I didn't hear back or they wanted a stable address or reliable transportation. I didn't tell them I was living in the damn thing. I didn't talk to my family much. My mom had passed a few years earlier, and my dad and I weren't close. My sister tried to help, but she had her own family to feed, and I didn't want to drag her into my mess. I was just stuck. And the worst part? I was starting to believe this was it. Like maybe I was just meant to fade out like this. Then one day, I was sitting in the truck outside a hardware store, eating a gas station burrito and just watching people come and go. I wasn't thinking about much. Maybe where I could pick up a few bucks, maybe how long until the transmission gave out. This guy walks up to my window, early 50s maybe, wearing a faded denim jacket and a baseball cap. He kind of smiles and says, "Hey man, you know if this place sells saw blades for a miter saw?" I said I wasn't sure, maybe inside in aisle 7 or 8. He thanked me and walked in. Didn't think much of it. 10 minutes later, he comes back out, holding a couple items, and instead of walking off, he leans on my truck door like we'd known each other forever. "You live in that thing?" he asks, real casual. I just looked at him. I didn't answer right away. He wasn't being mean about it, just curious. I finally said, "Yeah, for now." He nodded like that made perfect sense. Didn't flinch, didn't look uncomfortable. Just said, "I did that for 3 months back in '09. Laid off, divorce, same old story." I raised an eyebrow. Yeah, he said. "It's hell, but it ain't the end. You got a plan." I laughed, short and bitter. "Survive the week." He looked at me a second, then said, "Mind if I sit?" I shrugged. "Sure." He pulled over a milk crate from the back of his truck and sat right there in the sun next to me. Told me his name was Walt. Said he was a carpenter, mostly finish work now that his knees were shot. Had a small operation, did jobs around town. He didn't offer me work, didn't pity me, just talked. We sat there for over an hour. Just two guys swapping stories. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like a total screw-up. He didn't sugarcoat anything either. Just said, "Man, life kicks the hell out of you sometimes. But you either keep moving or you sink." That line stuck with me. He eventually got up, said he had to get back. But before he left, he wrote a number down on the back of a receipt. "Call me sometime, even if you just need to talk." I didn't know what to make of it. People didn't just do that, not around here. But he walked off, tossed his stuff in the back of his truck, and drove away. I stared at that number for a while. Didn't call it that day, or the next, but I kept it. It was about 4 days later when I finally called Walt. I just had one of those days where everything felt like a waste of time. Picked up a temp job cleaning out some old lady's garage, only to get stiffed on the pay because her nephew was supposed to cover it, or some crap. I was hot, tired, and just plain over it. I remembered the number. Still had it folded up in the glove box. Looked at it for a good 10 minutes before I dialed. Half hoping he wouldn't answer, to be honest. But he did. Picked up on the second ring. Said, "This is Walt." I froze a second, then said, "Hey, it's the guy from the truck. Outside the hardware store." "Hey man," he said like he'd been waiting for the call. "How you holding up?" "Been better," I admitted. "You said to call if I needed to talk." "Glad you did," he said. "What's on your mind?" I didn't even know what to say at first. Just kind of started talking. Told him about the job that fell through, the gas running low, how everything felt stuck. He listened, didn't interrupt. Then he said something simple. "You ever done demo work?" I said yeah, a few times. He said he had a kitchen remodel coming up and needed an extra pair of hands to gut the place. Said it wasn't glamorous, but it paid straight up cash, end of the day. I didn't ask questions. Just said, yeah, I'll do it. He gave me an address and a time, 7 a.m. the next morning. Said to bring gloves and boots if I had M. I didn't have boots, but I had a solid pair of sneakers and some gloves I'd snagged from a job weeks ago. That night, I parked near the job site. It was in a nicer part of town, some house getting redone for resale. Slept in the truck again, cracked the windows, and tried not to overthink it. Next morning, I was there before he was. Walt showed up in an old Ford van full of tools. Didn't say much, just handed me a thermos of coffee and said, let's get to it. We tore out cabinets, busted up tile, hauled debris to the dumpster. It was dirty work, but I didn't care. I was sweating, swinging a hammer, and not feeling sorry for myself for once. Felt good to use my hands again. Walt didn't micromanage. Just told me what needed doing and let me handle it. At lunch, we sat on the tailgate of his van, eating gas station sandwiches. He told me more about himself, grew up in Missouri, did construction most of his life, used to drink too much, lost a marriage over it. Said he'd been clean 6 years now. He looked at me and said, you remind me of me back then. Mad at the world, but still showing up. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just nodded. After the job, he handed me $200. Cash. I tried not to look surprised. It was more than I expected. Good work, he said. Come back tomorrow if you want. I did. We kept working that week. More demo, some framing, jobs around the site. He never treated me like a charity case. Just a guy doing honest work. I started feeling like maybe I wasn't totally lost. Like maybe I could still fix some of this mess I'd made. One night that week, after another day on the site, Walt asked if I wanted to grab a bite at a local diner. I hesitated, then said yeah. We sat in a booth, ordered burgers and fries. He didn't preach, didn't push. Just talked. But at one point, he looked at me dead on and said, you're not broken, man. You're just beat up. That's different. I didn't say anything, but that line hit hard. I kept working with Walt for the next couple of weeks. He didn't say much about the future, just gave me a new address each morning and paid me fair at the end of the day. I'd get a few hours of sleep in the truck, wash up best I could at a gas station nearby, and show up ready to go. The jobs weren't fancy, deck repair, drywall patching, junk hauling, but they were steady. And Walt made sure I was part of it. Not just labor. He'd ask what I thought about things. Let me measure cuts. Trusted me to go pick up supplies solo. I hadn't felt that in years, useful. One day we were painting this rental unit. I was up on a ladder and Walt was down below rolling the walls. He said, ever think about getting certified? You got a knack for this stuff. I laughed. Don't exactly have the cash for school. He nodded. Yeah, but there's ways around that. Grants, workforce programs. You just need to show up and ask. I didn't know what to say to that. I'd stopped thinking about stuff like that. My world had shrunk so small, just the next day, the next meal, the next gallon of gas. Long-term plans didn't even seem real. But now, with a little cash in my pocket, food in my belly, and someone treating me like a person again, I started to think about it. One Friday, after we wrapped up a deck job, Walt came over to the truck where I was chugging water. He looked at me and said, you still sleeping in that thing? I nodded. He pointed his thumb toward the back of his van. I got a buddy with an empty camper out on his property. He lets guys crash there sometimes as long as they help out around the place. You interested? I didn't answer right away. I'd gotten so used to people letting me down or letting them down that I didn't know how to take an offer that didn't come with a catch. He said it ain't the Ritz, but it's a roof and you'll have a real bed. That night, I followed him out to this little property about 15 minutes outside of town. His buddy, Tom, was ex-military, quiet but kind. Didn't ask many questions, just showed me the camper. It was old but clean. Had a working sink, a cot, even a little heater. I couldn't believe it. A place to sleep without worrying about getting the knock from security or the cold waking me up. I looked at Walt and just said, thanks, man. He shrugged. We all need a leg up now and then. I had mine. I moved in that night. Sat on that cot for a long time, just taking it in. It wasn't much. But to me, it felt like I just won the lottery. The next few days, I still helped Walt with jobs, but I also started helping Tom around his place. Clearing brush, fixing fence posts, whatever he needed. It felt good to be earning the space, not just mooching off someone else's kindness. And for the first time in a long time, I started thinking about what was next. Not just how to survive, but maybe how to start rebuilding. So there I was, sleeping in a camper instead of a truck, working regular with Walt and doing odd jobs for Tom. For the first time in what felt like forever, I had a bit of a rhythm. Still broke, but not desperate. Still tired, but not hopeless. One morning, Walt handed me a flyer he picked up from the library. It was for a local workforce center doing a free intro workshop on getting certified in the trades: plumbing, HVAC, carpentry. Said they had connections with training programs and could help with tools, boots, and job leads. I kinda stared at it. He said, "I can drive you over if you want. Just check it out. No commitment." I thought about it for a minute, then said, "Yeah. What the hell, right?" We went that Thursday. Just a small room in a strip mall, half a dozen folding chairs, a couple of other guys around my age or older. A woman from the center gave a short talk, explained how the programs worked, what they cost, mostly nothing if you qualified, and how to sign up. It didn't feel like some fancy pitch. It felt real. Afterward, I stuck around and filled out a form. Talked to a guy named Mike, one of the counselors. Told him my situation: homeless until recently, no real address, not much money. He didn't blink. Just said, "We've had worse. You show up, we'll figure out the rest." A week later, I was enrolled in a pre-apprenticeship carpentry course. They gave me a basic toolkit, steel toe boots, and even covered the bus pass I'd need to get to the training center across town. I couldn't believe it. Walt kept me working part-time while I did the program. He adjusted his jobs to fit around my schedule. Said, "This is the stuff that moves the needle, man. You get that cert, you're in a whole different world." I started waking up earlier. Ate better. Even cut back on the smokes. It felt like every swing of the hammer was building something, not just the house or the deck, but me. My life. I hadn't had that feeling since before the divorce, before the factory shut down. One afternoon, we were building a little porch addition. Walt stood next to me while I checked the level on a joist. He said, "You're starting to stand different." I said, "What, like taller?" He smiled. "No, like someone who belongs here." That stuck with me. Not everything was perfect. There were still days when I'd open my bank app and see $5 left. Or when I'd wake up sweating in that camper, wondering how long I could keep the streak going. But it was different now. I had momentum. And I had people: Walt, Tom, even the guy Mike at the center, who seemed to give a damn whether I showed up. I didn't expect it. I didn't ask for it. But it made a difference. Sometimes I wondered why Walt even bothered. Why he picked me out of all the people out there struggling. I asked him once while we were packing up the tools. He just said, "You looked like you still had a fight left in you." By the time I finished that pre-apprenticeship course, I felt like a different person. I wasn't fixed or anything, still had baggage, still had doubts, but I wasn't stuck anymore. And that was huge. They gave me a certificate, nothing fancy, but it felt like I'd earned something real. That was the first time I'd completed anything since my marriage fell apart. I shook hands with the instructors, thanked Mike, and even let myself smile a little. Just a little. That night, I got back to the camper and found Walt sitting out front in a lawn chair with 2 folding beers in a cooler between his feet. "Figured we ought to toast the new guy," he said. I cracked one open and we just sat there watching the sun dip behind the trees. He didn't say much and I didn't need him to. It felt good just to be there. The next day, Walt pulled me aside on a job site. Said a buddy of his was looking for someone to help with a long-term porch rebuild project, steady work, paid legit, not just cash under the table. Said I'd still work with him part-time if I wanted, but this would be a good step up. I met the guy, Barry. Big guy with a thick mustache and a no-nonsense attitude. We talked for 10 minutes and he told me to show up Monday with my tools. It felt weird walking into a job that felt real. Not just a day hustle. Like, here's a schedule, a crew, a plan. I showed up early, did what I was told, asked questions, and kept my head down. Barry was tough but fair. He didn't hand out compliments, but he didn't have to. When I asked him how I was doing after the first week, he just grunted and said, "You ain't screwing it up, so keep doing that." Walt checked in with me once a week or so. We'd grab lunch or I'd help him on weekends. He never acted like I owed him anything, but I tried to show I appreciated it, fixed up a few tools for him, helped Tom clean out a shed, small stuff like that. One weekend, Walt handed me an old belt sander and said, "It's yours. You're gonna need it where you're headed." I asked him where that was. He said, "Forward." That hit me harder than I expected. Money started building slowly. I opened a checking account again. Started paying Tom a little each month to help with propane and water for the camper. Eventually, I even looked into low-income housing options. Just poking around. Nothing fancy. There was a weekend I'll never forget. I was walking through a store. Not browsing, Not killing time, but actually shopping. I had a list. Work pants, decent gloves, some groceries. I stood there, card in hand, and realized I wasn't worried if it would go through. That moment stuck with me, not because of the stuff I bought, but because I didn't feel like I was faking it anymore. I was starting to feel like a regular guy again. Not fixed, not perfect, but standing on my own 2 feet. I called my sister that night. We hadn't talked in a while. She sounded surprised but happy to hear from me. I told her things were better. She cried. I didn't, but I felt it. She said Mom would be proud. I didn't know what to say to that. Still don't. It was around this time that I started thinking long-term. I don't mean 10-year plans or anything wild like that, but stuff like steady housing, maybe saving for a truck that didn't leak power steering fluid every other week. Normal stuff. Stuff I hadn't let myself hope for in years. Walt and I still kept in touch. Even though I wasn't working with him full-time anymore, he checked in, sometimes with a job, sometimes just a quick, "You good?" text. The man wasn't big on words, but when he said something, you knew it meant something. I kept working with Barry, and eventually he let me take on more responsibilities. Cut lists, ordering supplies, even training a new guy one day when we were short. I could feel it happening, people trusting me again. I also started saving. Nothing crazy, but I opened a savings account with $20 and put in a little every Friday. Felt dumb at first. $20? What was that gonna do? But Walt told me once, you save because of the habit, not the amount. A couple months later, I had just over 500 saved. And to me, that felt like 10 grand. I remember one Thursday, Barry's crew finished a 2-week job early. He handed us all a little bonus, $50 extra in cash, and said, "Don't spend it all at the bar." I didn't. I put it in the savings account. Then I took myself out for a cheap dinner. Sat at the counter at a diner and had meatloaf with mashed potatoes. And it hit me that I wasn't constantly waiting for the next thing to go wrong. I was just living. One night, Walt invited me over for dinner at his place. First time I'd been to his actual house. Simple place, clean, couple of old photos on the wall. He grilled burgers, we drank a couple beers, and watched some ball game on TV with the sound low. At one point he said, "You know, man, you've come a long way." I nodded. "Still a ways to go." "Sure," he said, "but you're not running from the fire anymore. You're building something." That sat with me. Later that week, I finally applied for an apartment. Nothing fancy, just a studio over a shop near the edge of town. Small, but it had its own bathroom and kitchen, and I could afford it if I kept working steady. The landlord asked for proof of income and references. I gave him Barry's number and Walt's. Figured if they vouched for me, I had a shot. 2 days later, I got the call. I got it. I stood outside that camper for a long time after. Didn't say anything. Didn't move. Just let it sink in. Walt came by that evening. I told him. He just smiled, clapped me on the back, and said, "Told you weren't done." The day I moved into that apartment, it was raining. Not pouring. Just one of those steady drizzles that makes everything feel heavier. I didn't have much to move. Mostly some clothes, my tools, and a couple boxes I'd kept in the camper. Tom helped me haul the mattress from the camper into the back of his pickup, and Walt showed up with a small table and 2 chairs he'd sanded and refinished himself. Said, "Figured you'd need a place to eat that isn't the floor." The apartment smelled like fresh paint and cleaner. The floors creaked a little, and the fridge buzzed when it kicked on, but it was mine. First night, I just laid there on that mattress in the middle of the room, listening to the rain hit the window. No car noise. No parking lot sweepers. No wondering if I'd get a knock on the window at 3 a.m. I didn't cry or anything like that, but I felt this weird peace, like I'd finally gotten a bit of my life back. A couple weeks in, I bought a secondhand microwave and a lamp from a yard sale. Borrowed a buddy's Wi-Fi until I could afford my own. Little by little, it started to feel like home. Not fancy, not perfect, but mine. Work stayed steady. Barry had us doing framing on a big new addition, and I was getting more confident calling measurements, planning cuts, helping newer guys on the crew. The training I got from that pre-apprenticeship was actually paying off. I even started helping Mike at the workforce center once a month, just talking to new guys coming in. Told him what I'd been through, how I got started. Some listened, some didn't. But I figured if even one of them walked out with a little more hope than they came in with, it was worth it. Walt swung by one weekend, handed me a heavy envelope. Inside was a worn paperback book called Shop Class as Soulcraft and a handwritten note that just said, "You build more than you fix. Don't forget that." I asked him why he gave it to me. He said, "Because I'm about to take on fewer jobs. Doctor told me to slow down. Knees are shot, back's going. Might start teaching part-time, maybe volunteer." I nodded. "You earned it." He gave me a long look. "So did you." That stuck with me hard. That summer, I saved enough to fix up my truck. New tires, brakes, got the AC working again. No more worrying if I'd stall at a red light. I even drove out to visit my sister and her kids. First time I'd seen them in person in over 2 years. She hugged me like I'd come back from the dead. And in a way, maybe I had. Things weren't perfect. They still aren't. I still have days where I feel like I'm holding things together with duct tape and good intentions. But I go to sleep under a roof I pay for. I wake up with work to do. I don't flinch when the phone rings. And Walt? He's still around. Not working much now, but we meet up every other week. Sometimes we talk about jobs, sometimes about nothing at all. But every time we part ways, he always says the same thing: keep going forward. A year after I met Walt, almost to the day, I was back at that same hardware store. Not sitting in my truck this time, just picking up some screws for a porch job I was managing. Not helping on, not tagging along. Managing. I had 2 guys working under me and a client who trusted me to get the job done right. As I was loading the cart, I caught a guy out of the corner of my eye. Mid-30s. Rough look, dirty clothes, standing by the exit just kind of staring at nothing. Holding a plastic bag with maybe 2 items in it. And parked at the edge of the lot, a beat-up SUV with blankets in the back. I knew that look. I'd seen it in the mirror too many times. I didn't walk over right away. Thought about it. Didn't want to assume. But when I saw him walk toward the SUV and just sit there, head down, not even eating or messing with his phone, just sitting, I figured I had nothing to lose. So I walked over, same way Walt did with me. "Hey man," I said, "you know if this place has sandpaper sheets back by the saw blades?" He looked up, startled, and just shrugged. "Maybe. Not sure." I smiled. "Cool, thanks." Took a few steps, then turned around. "You livin' in that rig?" He stared at me, like he wasn't sure if I was messing with him, then just nodded. I nodded back. "Yeah, I did that too." His face changed a little. Not relaxed, but not as tight either. I said, "Look, I don't got a magic fix or anything, but I got a number you can call. They'll help with work training, might even get you into a short gig. And if you ever want to just talk or grab a sandwich or whatever, I'm around." I scribbled my name and number on the back of a receipt and handed it to him. The same way Walt did with me. He looked at it, nodded once. Didn't say much, but he took it. I walked back to my truck and sat there a minute. That's when I realized this thing. This whole journey, it wasn't just about getting back on my feet. It was about remembering what it's like when you don't have anything and someone shows up anyway. No agenda, no rescue plan, just shows up. Walt did that for me. Tom too. Even Mike at the workforce center. And now maybe I could be that for someone else. I still call Walt every week. He's slower now, had a minor back surgery, but he's doing okay. Told me once, "You know what the real work is? It ain't the building. It's passing it on." I get that now. And I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm building something day by day, call by call, board by board. Forward. Always forward.